Kyle Dubas made a lot of moves regarding the Pittsburgh Penguins bottom six over the weekend, but just how much better is that unit heading into the season? I'm going to give you my full thoughts and analysis on that coming up right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes, follow the show's Twitter at LO Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen / watch of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. So over the weekend, Kyle Dubas signed 3 brand new players to play in the bottom 6 this upcoming season: Matt Nieto, Noah Chari, and Lars Eller. And when I look at it, especially after a couple of days after all the signings were made, I do think the Penguins' bottom 6 is a little bit better compared to where it was at the end of this past season, but not as much as other people are saying. I do think the unit is better defensively. They're not going to be hemmed in their own zone, if giving up a bunch of chances / goals against. But I also don't think this is going to be a unit that's going to be scoring quite a few goals to fully help out the top 6. It's going to be similar in that department for the bottom 6 of last year, but it's going to be better than last year's bottom 6 defensively and on the penalty kill. I do think those two things were big with Dubas and the coaching staff. They want to get the PK back to being a top 5, top 10 team in the league, and they want to have a bottom 6 that's just kind of no event hockey. If they're not scoring, they're not giving up chances, and they want to just leave the game up to the top 6 to win. And on a lot of nights that works, but on others, when the top 6 is not doing anything, you need a bottom 6 that's going to be able to carry the load a little bit at times. And I just don't know if the bottom 6 as constructed right now can do that in the offensive zone. Bear with me here, because obviously this can change heading into the season. When I look at the bottom 6 right now, just 2 mock lines that I came up with. Kyle Granlund on the left wing, Lars Eller at third line center, Drew O'Connor as your third line left wing, Jeff Carter as your fourth line right wing, Noah Chari as your fourth line center, and Matt Nieto as your fourth line left wing. Where is the true third line center of that group? I still think the Penguins are badly missing a true third line center right now that can come in and score you 16, 17, upwards of 20 goals a season. That's not a Chari or Lars Eller, especially not anymore. There was a time where I do think Eller was one of the better third line centers in the league, but that time has passed. It was about 2013, 14, all up to about 2017, 18, 2018, 19, maybe the season after that. But since then, he's been on a steady decline. He only had 10 goals and 23 points this past season. That production is good for a fourth liner, but it's not good for people who think he should be the team's third line center. And also, usually when you have a good 3C, this player can step up and play top 6 minutes when a top player goes out, like a Sidney Crosby, like an Evgeny Malkin. I'm sorry, my friends. I don't think Eller can do that at this point in his career. He may give you some of the defensive impacts. He ranks in the 68th percentile for even strength defense, but in even strength offense, he only ranks in the 41st percentile, goals per 60, 38th percentile, wins above replacement, 32nd percentile, finishing ability, ranks in the bottom third of the league. He's not known for his offense. Maybe he can step up for a game or two when one of Crosby or Malkin get hurt, but in like a 7 to 10 game stretch, that's not going to cut it. It's not. And that's why this team still needs to find a way to add a true third line center to this bottom 6. Because when I look at it right now, I don't think it's a hot take to say that these 2 lines are 2 really good fourth lines. Sure, you may get 10 to 11 goals out of Lars Eller. You may get 9 to 10, 11 goals out of Matt Nieto. I'm still a little bit I'm a little bit skeptical of him because of his 12 goals last season, 8 came with the Sharks in top 6 minutes and while playing with Erik Karlsson. He's not going to be getting those minutes with the Penguins. How much will those numbers go down? He'll still chip in, but is it going to be 12 goals? Is it going to be a little bit less? I don't know. What's going to happen with Jeff Carter? Funny enough, Jeff Carter outproduced Lars Eller last year, and he's washed. Jeff Carter had 13 goals and 29 points last season. He also outproduced Matt Nieto last season. Oh, and he also outproduced Noah Chari. Don't get me wrong. I like these additions, and I do think the Penguins are going to be a better team defensively in their own zone. I just don't know where a lot of the offense is coming from in the bottom 6. And again, when injuries do happen, Crosby and Malkin are not going to play 82 games again this upcoming season. I would be stunned. This was the first time ever that they both played 82 games in the same season. The chances of that happening again are really low. Who from that bottom 6 right now can step up and give you top 6 minutes? It's not Jeff Carter. It's not Mikael Granlund. It's not Lars Eller. It's not Noah Chari. It's none of these guys. Maybe Drew O'Connor in a pinch if he pans out. Other than that, I don't really see a player in this bottom 6 that can truly step up when needed. And I think this bottom 6, while it's going to be better defensively, it's still putting a lot of pressure on the top 6 to continue to produce every single game. We saw that last season, except that the Penguins had a black hole of a third line that couldn't do anything offensively or defensively, but had a fourth line where it was low event hockey, really good defensive impacts, not as much offense. Right now, the Penguins have 2 of those kind of lines, not bringing enough offense, but they're not going to kill you defensively. They're still relying on the top 6 to score and win you games on an every night basis. And this is why I do think, my friends, the Penguins need another piece or 2 in that bottom 6. If they can somehow get out of Mikael Granlund's contract, I don't think anything's going to happen with Jeff Carter. That's wishful thinking. But I do think they need another player or 2 down there that can give them adequate production on a third line role, maybe 16 to 20 goals, 40, 45 points, somewhere around those lines, because I don't see anyone in the bottom 6 right now giving the Penguins that kind of production. I just don't. And there's a player out there right now who honestly fits that role, and that is Tomas Tatar. 20 goals, 48 points this past season, ranks in the 77th percentile for 5-on-5 even strength offense, 86 percentile for transition, 88th percentile for 5-on-5 defensive impact. He is an all-around really good winger. He can play on the left and the right. He would obviously want to have to play for the Penguins, and they are over the cap right now, so you have to have that into the equation, but he would make a lot of sense on a third line role and bring you a lot more offense to the table. Oh yeah, and he can give you quite a good defensive impact. But when I look at this bottom 6 right now, I do think it's better, but there's not enough oomph down there. And that's one of the main things I really want Kyle to hopefully work on during this offseason, is getting some more oomph down there, a player who can score a little bit more and someone who can play in the top 6 when injuries occur, because I don't think the Penguins have any of that in their bottom 6 right now. Obviously, it's still July 3rd. There is a crap ton of time left. But right now, I see the Penguins as having 2 really good fourth lines instead of a third line and then maybe a no-event fourth line that's not going to score you a lot of goals, but it's not going to kill you in their defensive zone. That's what I see right now. Again, I don't have too many problems with the signings. I just want to see more offense brought to the table in the bottom 6 at some point. That's all I'm saying. That will wrap up this first segment of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Coming up in the second segment, we're going to get into the latest on the Penguins' pursuit of San Jose Sharks defenseman Erik Karlsson. But before we get into that, take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. And that's right, just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over under to who will even hit the first home run in a game. So sign up today and visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's fanduel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball and Locked On. All right, I'm back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at @LONShorePenguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen/watch of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. So there's been a lot of rumors/speculation about Erik Karlsson and the Penguins over this past weekend. On Saturday, you had Elliot Friedman going on NHL Network and saying that the Penguins are one of the last teams standing for Karlsson, along with the Carolina Hurricanes. Then today, on Monday, you had Frank Saravalli going on the DFO rundown, saying that he thinks the Penguins have cooled on the Karlsson talks and that he doesn't think the Hurricanes are a fit for Karlsson. He kind of sees the Seattle Kraken as the team to beat. Friedman, on the other hand, says that he thinks Seattle is out. So two different stories. I'm sure it probably meets in the middle. I personally think the Penguins are still involved with Karlsson, but it's only going to be on their terms. And that's why they cannot include a player like Marcus Pettersson in a deal to get Karlsson. Over the weekend, David Pagnotta of the Fourth Period noted that Marcus Pettersson's name has come up in trade talks regarding Karlsson between the Penguins and the Sharks. That is too far for me. Sure, Karlsson would make the offense really good among all the defensemen, but the defensive side of the rink would suffer big time. That's just how good Pettersson is. Right now, the left side of Pettersson, Graves, P.O. Joseph/Ty Smith, it's pretty decent. But when you take Pettersson away, it's Graves, P.O., and Ty Smith. That's not good enough. I like Ryan Graves quite a bit. The term is maybe a little Mitch on that contract, but he's still a pretty good player. He'll bring you good value, scoring goals, decent in transition, decent on the penalty kill, but he's not Marcus Pettersson. The only thing Graves is better at over Pettersson is scoring goals. This past season, Marcus Pettersson ranked in the 81st percentile for 5-on-5 even strength offense and the 87th percentile for even strength defense. If you compare that to Ryan Graves, 54th percentile for offense, 39th percentile for defense. Pettersson on the PK, 97th percentile for PK ability, 41 percentile for penalty kill for Graves. Outside of goal scoring, Pettersson is a better overall defenseman than Graves. He's coming off one heck of a year. I'm not willing to trade him just to make the offense a little bit better among the defensemen, because the defensive side of the ice is going to struggle big time. Think about it. Say the Penguins do trade for Karlsson and Pettersson goes the other way. Your defense looks something like Ryan Graves with Chris Letang, P.O. Joseph with Erik Karlsson. Is P.O. Joseph really going to cover up the warts that Karlsson will bring on the defensive end of the rink? No, he won't. But someone like Marcus Pettersson, who is the best defensive defenseman on the team, will do that. That is the only way I would make this trade, is if Pettersson is staying as a member of the Penguins. And I also know out there that there are people that don't want the Penguins to go get Karlsson. I very much understand that take. He doesn't bring a lot of good defensive value. Heck, he ranks in the 0th percentile if you look at Jay Fresh's charts, the 5th percentile for a 5-on-5 even strength defense if you go to Evolving Wild. He stinks. But that wouldn't matter as much if you have a defensive-minded partner with him. You part with Pettersson, that option immediately goes down the drain. P.O. Joseph isn't going to be that guy. Ty Smith won't be that guy. And I can sure as hell tell you all that Ryan Graves is also not going to be that guy. I am still down for the Penguins to trade for Karlsson, but it has to be on their own terms, and it has to be a package that makes sense for them. They don't even have the cap space right now. They would have to move on from quite a few big contracts, namely Jeff Petrie. I am sure Mikhail Granlund would also be involved. Maybe Jan Ruda gets involved in some capacity, probably a first-round pick as well, maybe a top prospect. It would have to be a pretty big deal. Heck, I think you would have to have a third team involved. That was reported over the weekend by both Josh Yohe and Rob Rossi. This won't just be a two-team deal. It can't. The Penguins salary cap situation doesn't allow that right now. It did a couple of days ago, but that's not the reality that we live in right now. So the Penguins are still involved with Karlsson, I believe, but it can't be with Pettersson going the other way. That will make the defensive group worse heading into next season. Even though you're going to get a lot of points from Karlsson, a lot of point production, the defensive end of the rink is going to stink. They will give up a lot more goals if Karlsson is on that defensive group and Pettersson is not, rather than if both of them are on the same defensive group. So that's where I stand when it comes to that situation and the latest on the Erik Karlsson situation as a whole. I am still a favor of getting him, but it has to make sense. Let me know what you think about the Erik Karlsson situation down in the comments on YouTube. You can also send me a DM on social media. I do think right now the Penguins' bigger need is third line center, but man, the team would be so much fun if they did go out and get Karlsson. Every game would be 8-7, 7-6, maybe even 9-8. Big throwback to the 80s for that kind of style of play. All gas, no breaks, would be hilarious, but I also understand the skepticism that people will have if the Penguins are able to get Karlsson. Just can't involve a really good top four defenseman because Pettersson is that dude. He is. But that'll do it for this second segment of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Coming up to end the show, we're going to touch on more regarding Tristan Jarry's contract and why the Penguins are making a huge investment in him. That's coming up right after this. All right, I'm back doing this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow this show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen/watch of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. So Tristan Jarry, 5 years, $5.375 million per season to be the goaltender to close out the Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Chris Letang era. I am still kind of the belief that Kyle was maybe getting a little cornered there as these goalies were starting to come off the market, maybe getting a little bit nervous, so he just caved for the term. But I also know that of the free agents available at the time, Jarry was by far the best one. And there is a way this can work. If he stays healthy and gets back to the form that we saw from him in 2021, 2022, this will be a perfectly fine deal. I am usually someone who is against paying goalies term, but if he plays up to this kind of contract, it's going to age very, very nicely. And that 2021-2022 season was, I think, Jarry's best season as an NHL goaltender. Finished 11th in goals saved above expected with 12.8 played in 58 games, .919 save percentage, 2.42 goals against average. He was tied for 10th, actually, with Ilya Sorokin, who just signed that massive 8-year extension with the Islanders for goals saved above expected with 12.8. That is just how good he was that season. And there is a way that he can get back to that level. It's all about him being consistent, him staying healthy. That's obviously the biggest one. But the one thing I really want to see him improve on for this season and in seasons after this one, outside of him staying healthy, is his 5-on-5 high danger save percentage. He was a wreck with that this past season. His 5-on-5 high danger save percentage this past season ranked 97th among all NHL goaltenders. That is not close to good enough. The season before, where he, I think, had his best season of his career, finished 23rd in that respective category. He has to be better with the chances 10 to 15 feet away from the net. You can make all the low danger saves you want, like, 40, 45 feet out, medium danger as well. You can make all those saves 20, 25 feet out, heck, even 30 feet out. But if you're not doing your job in close, you're going to cost the team quite a few games. How many times this past season would everyone say, man, you really need a save there? Well, that's going to be a big one heading into this season and heading into this contract as a whole. You need him to make big saves in big moments and not crumble under pressure. And I understand that 6-game sample against the Islanders is from a few years ago. That's really the only playoff sample we've had of him outside of that Game 7 against the Rangers. But I think that one's also a little unfair to use because he was playing on a broken foot. And I also think he played his tail off in that game. But I want to see him perform better in high leverage situations and make more big time saves from about 5, 10, 15 feet out. I don't need him to steal games for this team, but I do need him to make a few big saves every now and then, because I think that was a big thing that was lacking this past season, injured or not. But I'm curious to see how this deal ages. It's a big ticket, but if Andy Chiodo can get a lot out of him and he stays healthy, there's no reason to think that Jarry can't be one of the better goaltenders in the league. I do think when healthy, Tristan is in that 8 to 12 range in terms of goalies in the league. He's not one of the elite 5 to 7 goalies who should be getting all the term and all the money they want, but I think he's just a step below that, where when healthy, you can see the talent jumps out at you. Just has to stay consistent and has to stay healthy. There were so many times this past season where it looked like he was going to run away with the net again, but boom, he would have a bad game. And yeah, he was also playing a bit banged up, but that can't happen again this upcoming season, injured or not. So I'm curious to see how this goes. He needs to get better in the big situations, and I would love for him to prove so many people wrong, including myself, because I am still a bit nervous about this contract. There is definitely a non-zero chance that it ages like milk, especially if he doesn't stay healthy and he's inconsistent. But if he's able to get to his true potential and play at the level that he did, actually even higher than a level that he did during the 2022 season, the sky could be the limit for this goaltender. But that will wrap up this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I really appreciate all of you listening / watching this one. I'll have another episode for you all on Tuesday before I have Josh Yowie on the show on Wednesday. 5 episodes again for you all this week, another 5 next week, even though I am going to the beach this upcoming weekend. I'm going to be heading down to Virginia Beach to get away from things here in Pittsburgh and just relax on the beach during the day. After that week, the show will go down to 3 episodes a week. But I really appreciate all of you listening / watching this one. There's 4,400 people that tuned in to the bonus episode on Saturday. You all rock. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. I very much appreciate it. I'll be back with another episode for you all on Tuesday.